The mother studied her for a moment, then handed her the baby. She said she would step out just for a moment to buy medicine for him, and would be right back. Before leaving, she hung a coconut-shaped pendant around the baby's neck. Then she disappeared completely. No matter how much the woman searched, the mother was simply gone. On a rainy day in a Chinese city, a mother hurried through the streets with her baby in her arms, trying to get away from the people chasing her. She stopped in a narrow corner and softly sang to calm the child, hoping he wouldn't feel afraid. A woman who lived nearby heard the singing and walked over. She invited the mother inside so the baby wouldn't get soaked and fall sick. Years passed, and the boy grew up with the name Shu. 18 years later, he walked through a local festival with his adoptive sister. People were chatting excitedly about individuals who had recently awakened supernatural powers, and apparently the number of gifted people was rising fast. Shu noticed a big crowd gathered around a performer who was manipulating fire. It looked suspiciously like real powers, not party tricks. Shu and his sister moved closer for a better view. The moment Shu saw the fire swirl, everything around him froze. Time simply stopped. Then, without warning, he found himself somewhere in outer space, with a sword floating calmly in front of him. At the same moment, the pendant on his chest glowed for a few seconds. Everything vanished just as suddenly, and Shu snapped back into the festival. He stared at the performer, completely stunned. There was no way this man was normal. After the show, his sister suggested they go backstage to figure out how the performer pulled it off. Shu agreed, and the two of them slipped behind the tents, only to see a group of people drugging the performer. He collapsed right in front of them. Shu's sister screamed on instinct, which alerted the group. Shu stepped forward and tried to act like he was lost, claiming they were just looking for a bathroom. The group insisted they were the police, and claimed they were interrogating the man. Shu nodded, played along and walked away with his sister, though his mind was racing. He knew the performer had used a real power during the show, and these people were clearly after him. Later, Shu asked his sister what she thought about all the newly awakened individuals. She spoke confidently, saying she planned to become stronger than all of them once her own ability appeared. She added that Shu's future power would probably be weak just like him, but she would protect him anyway, since he basically served as her full-time chef. Shu was stunned for a moment, then simply accepted it with a smile. They returned home, where Shu greeted the woman who had raised him since childhood. She was watching news reports about people gaining supernatural abilities. Shu went to cook something for her, but the house was out of pasta, so he headed out to buy more. As he walked, memories from his childhood drifted in. Nobody had ever stood by him except Lu. Even when he was sick, she was the only one who visited him. She had even escaped the orphanage just to stay with him. Lost in those memories, Shu didn't notice the speeding car until it hit him. The impact sent him crashing to the ground, bleeding heavily. It looked like the end until the pendant around his neck activated. It lit up, healed all of his wounds, and lifted him into the air for a moment, before dropping him gently back down. Shu opened his eyes, stunned that he felt no pain. He assumed his supernatural power had awakened. Of course, he also felt the need to at least mentally scold the driver for hitting him. The driver stood nearby, pale as a ghost, convinced Shu had died. But Shu suddenly stood up with perfect health, looking almost supernatural himself. Terrified, the man watched numbers flash above his own head. Then he sprinted back to his car and drove away as if running from a horror movie. Shu continued his trip to buy pasta. The shopkeeper nearly fainted when he saw the dried blood on Shu's face, and once again numbers popped up over his head. Shu had no idea what was happening, so he grabbed the pasta and hurried home. On the way, he bumped into two people, and numbers appeared above their heads as well. Back home, Lu asked what had happened to him, but Shu brushed it off and rushed to the bathroom. There were no injuries anywhere on his body. He went to his room and imagined what his power might be. Right then, a strange screen appeared in front of him, listing all the points he had collected that day. He didn't recognize any of the names on the list until he remembered the numbers floating above people's heads. That's when it clicked. Whenever he annoyed someone or got on their nerves, he gained magic points. The more people he bothered, the more points he earned. And with those points, his power grew even stronger. Shu felt unstoppable. He decided he would keep annoying everyone he met until he became some kind of casual modern-day demon king. The more he irritated people, the stronger he became. And honestly, he found that idea pretty motivating. He kept exploring the strange screen floating in front of him. A feature called the Wheel of Fortune appeared, and it allowed one spin for every 100 points. Shu had 900 points saved up, so 9 spins were waiting for him. Not bad at all. He spun the wheel once, then twice, and both times he got nothing but a polite message thanking him for participating. On the third try, a magical apple popped out. The moment he ate it, a wave of energy rushed through his body, healing him completely. Feeling hyped, he kept spinning until he earned a scroll containing the same song his mother used to sing to him when he was little. He tried humming it with his eyes closed, and suddenly something strange pulled him inward, like he'd dropped straight into his own power. He found himself in another world, competing with his sister, while negative points floated in front of him. That only encouraged him to irritate her even more, happily collecting points with every little annoyance. Once that odd experience ended, Shu decided to relax and watch a movie. But midway through he sensed something strange outside. He climbed up to the rooftop and spotted the same group he had seen before. He tried to hide, but they still caught him. One of the men recognized him and explained they were hunting a criminal nearby, telling him to stay inside so he wouldn't cause trouble. Shu went back into the house, quietly proud that he had sensed their power when they hadn't sensed his at all. Lu noticed him returning and started asking about his sudden rooftop appearance, but they both froze when they saw someone lying on the ground outside. Shu rushed out to check while Lu followed, constantly pestering him and unintentionally adding more points to his total. When Shu got closer, he realized the man was the same fire performer from before. He wanted to call an ambulance, but Lu quickly reminded him they couldn't afford that, suggesting they simply leave the man alone. The performer clearly didn't appreciate that, and negative points spilled out of him like a leaky faucet. Shu could tell the guy wasn't actually unconscious, so he leaned into irritating him to farm more points. The man finally snapped awake and demanded water. Shu handed him a piece of ice, the only thing he had, which made the performer even angrier, perfect for Shu's growing point collection. When the performer begged Lu for help, Shu knocked him flat again and kept provoking him. The performer eventually tried to burn Shu with his fire ability, but Shu's own power kicked in and extinguished the flames instantly, leaving the man embarrassed and angrier than ever. After a few more failed attempts, the performer gave up and walked away, fuming. Shu sent him off with a casual reminder not to fall off another rooftop, adding a few more points to his total. Back inside, Lu questioned how Shu wasn't burned at all, wondering if his powers had awakened. Shu kept things vague, then casually mentioned that his abilities were already active. As he left the room, he tossed a quick instruction for her to finish his homework before bed, happily collecting a few extra points from her irritation. Later, Shu returned to exploring his powers. He found an item he could buy with points, purchased it and ate the strange substance that appeared. He was pulled back into his inner energy world, and this time he saw a far-off planet drifting in front of him. The moment he returned to reality, he discovered he had gained a new ability, strong enough to lift his entire bed with one hand. He walked out to the living room, where Lu sat watching TV, and joined her. He pulled up his class group chat and started teasing everyone in it, earning a generous amount of points while barely trying. Lu eventually commented on how none of his classmates ever contacted him. Shu explained that they simply knew he didn't have money, so no one bothered involving him in anything. Lu pointed out that he tended to take the easy way out, but Shu reminded her of how much they paid for rent, water, and gas, and how little they had left over. Money was tight, and survival was their main priority. Feeling bad for him, Lu handed him a basket of eggs to sell the next morning. Selling eggs was one of their main sources of income, and every day before school, Shu went out to make whatever money he could. The next morning, Shu headed out to sell eggs as usual. An old man at the stand beside him asked about Lu, and Shu explained she was sick and couldn't come. Two of his classmates walked by but pretended he didn't exist. The old man grew irritated and wondered why they ignored him. Shu figured they were simply embarrassed to acknowledge someone selling eggs. The old man muttered about how strange it was to look down on honest work. A moment later, the class president approached Shu with the sole purpose of mocking him. He made a snide comment about Shu surviving off egg sales. Shu understood immediately what he was doing and answered calmly, which only annoyed the boy further and conveniently earned Shu extra points. The class president kept pushing, warning Shu that his reputation would suffer if the school found out. Shu suggested that if the president cared so much, he could buy the eggs himself. The boy accepted the challenge, so Shu emptied the entire stash into a single bag and announced that the class president had just bought them all. The people in line were furious, which gave Shu a satisfying burst of points. The sale was over in seconds. Later, Shu returned to class and found a new website that tracked students with awakened powers. The idea sparked a plan. He stood up and announced that a new student had awakened a power. The whole class jumped with excitement, waiting for a name. He told them the submission was anonymous, so there was no name to share. The disappointment and irritation in the room practically showered him with more points. Before the class could calm down, another student burst into the room claiming that a boy from the upper class had awakened a power and was attacking people. The student said the principal was being held on the rooftop and was seconds away from being thrown off. Shu immediately saw a perfect opportunity to collect even more points, and rushed toward the rooftop. On the way he passed a girl and sensed she had a hidden power as well, though she wasn't showing it. Reaching the rooftop, he found the powered student gripping the principal and edging dangerously close to the ledge. Everyone else stood frozen in fear. Shu stepped forward with a new idea and launched into a long, dragging lecture about the consequences of killing the principal. His speech was painfully slow. Everyone grew bored, and Shu quietly raked in points the entire time. While the attacker was distracted, the police moved in, captured him, and restored order. Back in class, Shu walked into a room filled with workers who had arrived to test students for awakened powers. He tried to slip away but had no chance. After school, he headed home with nerves creeping in. A man stopped to introduce himself, but Shu ignored him completely, earning a few more points on the walk. When he reached home, Lu opened the door looking pale and exhausted. Shu helped her to bed and promised to get medicine. Once she was resting, he wondered whether his magical fruits could heal her. He activated his ability and spun the wheel until he earned a handful of small fruits. He gave one to Lu, and within seconds her fever vanished, as if nothing had happened. She recovered so fast that Shu couldn't resist teasing her a bit more for extra points. The next day at school, test results were finally announced. The first name called was Li, the same girl Shu had sensed earlier on the stairs. Then came the class president, and several others. Finally the last name appeared, spoken with disbelief by the teacher. It was Shu, the same student who had collected an absurd number of points from the entire class just the day before. The following day a new student arrived and took the seat beside Shu after the previous girl abandoned it. Exhausted from his endless teasing, the new boy's name was Gia. Shu immediately began poking at him the way he did with everyone else, gaining points within seconds. That evening, all students with awakened powers gathered at the school for training. Shu went to the classroom and recognized the trainer as the same man he had run into several times already. The man began by asking if anyone knew about the sodium-potassium mixture. The class president raised his hand eagerly, but the trainer chose Shu instead. Shu answered in his usual offhand, mildly chaotic way, which irritated the trainer instantly. The trainer then explained that the mixture represented efficiency, and that anyone whose blood touched the liquid would cause it to change color depending on the strength of their power. The darker the color, the stronger the ability. Small test tubes were passed around so everyone could measure their current level. It was only a baseline. He reminded them power could grow with training. When the results came in, Shu ranked at the very bottom. He had eaten a fruit earlier that intentionally weakened his reading so no one would know his true capability. The class president tried to mock him for it, but Shu responded with his usual dry, perfectly timed remarks, irritating the boy and everyone around him all over again. Later that evening, Shu drifted back home and let his ability flare to life. A faint shimmer rose before him, and a small notification bloomed across his vision. Something new had been added to the Wheel of Luck. With a quiet breath he spun it, watching the colors blur until it slowed and delivered his prize tofu. A strange, tragic little block, whose smell could knock out a grown man, yet whose taste, if one survived the first assault, was heavenly. Lu caught the scent first. Her expression twisted, her entire soul recoiling, as if Shu had smuggled home a cursed relic. Shu, amused, kept spinning the wheel, collecting tofu like some bizarre gremlin hoarding misery. By the time 50 pieces had piled up, Lu's patience had collapsed completely. Shu only shrugged, claiming this was all fate had gifted them, not the most appetizing destiny. Later, Shu retreated to his room, staring at his mountain of tofu like it was plotting against him. Profit, he thought. There had to be profit somewhere in this madness. Eventually an idea sparked. Sell the tofu, let the smell irritate half the town, collect negative points from their complaints, and walk away richer. He spun again, and the entire air shifted. A document materialized, shimmering faintly, but before he could open it, raw power surged into Lu. Time cracked around them, freezing mid-breath. A black beam tore down from the heavens, spearing through the roof and into her chest with terrifying elegance. Lu trembled, overwhelmed, and Shu urged her to focus inward. When she did, her star map blossomed to life, her power awakening at last. Joy lit her eyes, bright enough to push back the lingering shock. The next morning he stepped outside ready for business, only to find an old man practicing sword techniques with unnerving grace. The man even offered to teach him, demonstrating a flashy move clearly meant to impress. Shu strolled past without a hint of interest, earning fresh irritation and fresh points in the process. At the market no one dared touch Shu's tofu at first, but once a single brave soul tasted it and discovered its strange brilliance, the crowd swarmed, devouring his entire stock in seconds. Sho continued his routine afterward, poking at people's nerves just enough to gather more points, unlocking more power, and enabling even more mischief. His star map eventually filled, each planet conquered, and a new energy stirred within him. The sword summonable into reality now answered his call. Returning to class, Sho found his classmates murmuring about the rise in bizarre incidents. The student council president, dramatic as always, proposed forming some secret group to fight crime, but no one took him seriously. When he tried to provoke Sho instead, Sho's silence frustrated him to the edge of madness, earning Sho yet another shower of points. That night, during star map training, the instructor introduced a mystical stone meant to amplify their abilities. Sho's excitement faltered when his own star map rejected it outright, already too advanced to absorb such a basic tool. So he returned to his best strategy, irritating people for profit. The next day, the old swordsman was back, spinning through wild acrobatic strikes aimed squarely at catching Sho's attention. Sho slipped past him like a breeze, completely unmoved. At school, the student council president was destroying challengers in arm wrestling with theatrical flair. When Sho walked by, the president mocked him and insisted on a match using his weaker left hand. Sho accepted, gripped and won instantly. The room froze. Points rained on him. Sho casually suggested a rematch with their dominant arms, and when he won again, the president's dignity shattered like cheap glass. Sho added a teasing comment about gaining power from the president's touch, which made the poor guy burn with fury. Another avalanche of points well earned. During lunch, Sho followed the others with a fresh supply of tofu, letting the stench stalk them like a demon. The suffering he caused was almost an art form. Jay approached him, curious about his sudden burst of power. Shuso, never one to waste an opportunity, raised his voice and credited the student council president as his new lucky charm. Jaya suggested reporting the improvement to their instructor for extra magic stones. When Shuso asked where the teacher worked, Jaya explained he was part of the Earth Network, one of several networks alongside the far more powerful Sky Network. Shuso nodded, filing the information away with a spark of new ambition. When Sho returned home that evening, muted voices drifted through the air outside his door. He paused, listening. Their tone carried authority, a sharp edge he recognized immediately. They were from the Sky Network. Their leader approached the old man and extended an offer of recruitment with a calm confidence. The old man waved it off, claiming he wasn't free. The leader reminded him that the vacant position had been prepared for him alone, then departed with his entourage, leaving the air heavy with unspoken history. From afar, Sho watched with narrowed eyes. The old man clearly had ties to the Sky Network, serious ones. That was reason enough for Sho to seek him out as a teacher. Swordsmanship suddenly felt like a path worth walking. The next morning, Sho approached the old man and requested training. The old man lit up, pleased, accepting readily. Sho agreed but added one small condition. Lu would need help with her studies, since he had no time to tutor her. Lu bristled instantly. The old man wasn't thrilled either. Sho of course absorbed points from their mounting irritation like it was fine sunlight, and the day ended on that familiar note. The following day in class, Sho watched his point count climb steadily. At first it puzzled him, until he sensed Lu's chaotic energy. She was giving the old man trouble during their study session, her power reacting in a way that fed his system effortlessly. As Sho left class, he crossed paths with Sai. She moved with unusual stillness, too calm, as if containing something sharp beneath the surface. Meanwhile, the old man attempted to teach Lu basic math. Lu, exhausted and unfiltered, fired off commentary that pushed the man's patience to its very limits. Her conclusion about his years of counting failure was particularly vicious, and her talent for annoyance was truly spectacularly refined. Sho's points spiked accordingly. Eventually, the old man returned to Shu and declared the tutoring complete. It was time for swordsmanship. Shu accepted without hesitation. The old man brought out a series of training weights, explaining that the heaviest glove surpassed 300 kilograms. Shu inspected the gear for only a breath before picking up the glove with one hand and tossing it lightly into the air. His power had grown too quickly, too far. The old man could only stare in astonishment before beginning the lesson. He lifted a sheet of paper, letting his energy coil around it like a silent storm. With a single swing of his arm, he tore the air itself, splitting the space before them and carving the wall behind clean in half. Then he tossed his sword to Sho, allowing him to begin. Sho trained relentlessly, energy surging with each movement. His body understood the blade instinctively, as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. He advanced with startling speed, revealing a natural aptitude the old man had not anticipated. When evening arrived, the old man posed a quiet reflection on strength. Shio answered with the conviction of someone who had already shaped his own path. He believed true power came not from rule breaking but from living with purpose. His goal remained simple: to live peacefully and protect his sister. Wealth and missions didn't tempt him. He preferred his own way, difficult or not, right or wrong. Hearing this, the old man's respect for him deepened, and he accepted Shio's resolve without argument. The next day, the old man resumed tutoring Lu, easing her focus with potato chips, as if they were enchanted artifacts. She learned faster, though she still maintained the temperament of a small storm cloud. Mid-lesson, he sensed someone behind him. Another presence from the Sky Network. Lu's irritation flared again, gifting Shio even more points somewhere across the building. She arrived soon after and found the teacher speaking with the visitor, a man named Sheer. Lu spotted Shio and complained lightly before going to fetch something he claimed he forgot. Meanwhile, Sheer described the dangers rising across the country and urged the old man to join the Sky Network once more. The old man declined again before Sheer vanished, as quietly as he came. Afterward, the old man handed Shio 2 sodium tubes to measure his power level. Shio triggered them, and the liquids inside shifted instantly to deep black. Grade A, one of the highest classifications. Then the color darkened even further, surpassing Grade A entirely. Lu's power had risen above A as well. The reality of their growth settled heavily around them. Shihai took the tubes outside and buried them beneath the earth so no one else would discover the truth. At that moment, the old man crossed paths with him and asked about the results. Shihai shrugged, claiming weakness as usual. The old man's shock was clear, but he simply walked away, leaving Shihai alone with the quiet secrets of his growing power. Later, Shu continued to train with his star map, until a new ability awakened within him, an aura that wrapped around his body like a protective flame, shielding him from harm and amplifying his strength. Deep inside, a thought lingered. He needed to understand what had happened with Luo. At that moment, Luo slept restlessly, drifting through a dream where her star map pulsed with dark radiance. A new power awakened in her as well. When Shu guided her to release it, she summoned a small ant from the void of her black hole, explaining that she could now sense the energy of creatures that had recently died. That ant had perished only a day earlier. Wanting to test the limits of her ability, Shu took her outside. She summoned a beautiful bird next, delicate and serene, but he explained with calm practicality that such creatures would be useless in a real fight. They needed something sturdier, something aligned with her strange dark energy. Luo asked what he had in mind, and he simply led her onward with that familiar mischief in his eyes. He brought her to a butcher's shop, suggesting that her new partner should match her dark affinity. She accused him of trying to turn her into a pig girl. His laughter gave her the answer long before he did. They waited until one of the animals was slaughtered, then returned home. There, Luo summoned her new creature, a pig forged from the void. Shu tested its form, checking if it resembled a living beast, and found that it did. Curious, he drew his sword and dispatched it in a single strike. Luo nearly exploded at him on the spot, ready to finish him as well, but he apologized quickly and promised to cook dinner. Food worked wonders. She calmed and joined him at the table. While they ate, Shu felt unexpectedly content. Thanks to the money he'd earned selling tofu, their lives had begun to stabilize. Their home was finally within reach. No more rent, no more scraping by. But the moment of peace didn't last. Shu sensed individuals nearby who carried supernatural energy. He stepped outside to investigate, only for Lu to cling to his arm, insisting on coming along. She refused to be left behind. They sprinted toward the disturbance. On a bridge ahead, a gang confronted a squad of police officers. Shu and Luo watched from above as one officer deflected attacks with effortless precision. But a single mistake cost him his footing, and a criminal seized the opening. The officer retreated toward his comrades, regrouping for a second clash. One of the criminals was terrifyingly strong, ranked 4th, a level that marked him as a lethal threat. He cut down 2 officers before escaping with his men. The police reorganized quickly, preparing an ambush. Shu sent his sister back and slipped after the criminals alone. He arrived at a house surrounded on all sides by police. The gang had barricaded themselves within. Inside, one subordinate panicked, wanting to surrender. The boss dismissed him and dragged both men outside, using them as human shields as the police opened fire. The bullets tore through his own men while he remained untouched, a wicked, unhinged monster. As he prepared to slaughter them, everyone suddenly noticed a figure descending from above. Xiao landed lightly, claiming he'd arrived by accident. The police misunderstood, assuming he was with the criminals. Several officers charged him immediately. 2 attacked with intent to kill, but Xiao outmaneuvered them easily, his movements sharp and controlled. He dismantled both with clean, decisive skill. Officers chased after him. One managed to strike him with a thrown sword, piercing his body. They believed they had neutralized him until he rose again, unfazed, hunger for violence burning in his eyes. Meanwhile, a handful of officers clashed again with the criminal. They seemed close to victory, until he broke one officer's guard and provoked another into a fatal mistake, ending another life with brutal efficiency. His strength was monstrous. Shay finished his own 2 opponents, and turned his attention to the battlefield, just as the metal plate beneath him loosened. He dropped suddenly, and an officer attempted to strike him mid-fall, but Shay reversed the momentum and defeated him instead. Only Sho and the criminal remained. The criminal promised death with a twisted smile, but Shu's aura ignited and the clash erupted. Shu's power surged, overwhelming the criminal's strength in a burst of decisive force. The monstrous foe fell, defeated. Sho stood amidst the shattered ground, victorious, a quiet, undeniable testament to the strength he had grown into. After the clash subsided, and the night finally breathed again, Sho returned home. Lu met him at the doorway, her worry practically clinging to him like a shadow. He eased her tension with the same calm grin he always used in dangerous moments, guiding her outside with a gentle promise meant to lift her spirits. She remembered how the last time he tried to cheer her up, he ended up dragging her into a noisy pig shop, and her expression said she hadn't forgotten. Sho only laughed, insisting this time would be different. They set off together, crossing paths with the old man who always seemed to appear at the wrong time. Lu casually explained they were headed toward a nearby restaurant, and Sho confirmed it with a steady nod. Moments later, the rooftops became their path, their silhouettes gliding across the tiles. Sho asked Lu to scan the area within a kilometer. Lu summoned her bird, its wings shimmering in the faint moonlight as it swept the sky. Her senses returned empty. Nothing unusual lurked nearby. Lu reminded him that he had promised a restaurant. Sho tried brushing it off as a joke, but she snapped at the idea of returning hungry and letting the old man mock their empty stomachs. Sho surrendered with a laugh and declared that their victory deserved a celebration. Shu went ahead to check the spot himself. It was vacant. He called her over, and once she arrived, he asked if she sensed any dead energy. Lu detected 3, 1 tall, 2 short. He instructed her to take the tall one's energy. She absorbed it, but when he urged her to summon it for verification, she admitted she was drained and would need a full day to recover. Shu accepted that without hesitation, praising their progress and suggesting they return home. They ended up in a modest downtown restaurant, where Lu ate with the appetite of someone who rarely allowed herself such comfort. As they shared their meal, Sho quietly told her that everything they had done that day must remain secret, and her powers must stay hidden. Lu agreed with a simple nod. Lu's tears fell before she could stop them. She told him that food and comfort meant nothing to her compared to living with him in the home they shared. Sho was struck deeply by her words. Old memories surfaced, 2 kids clinging to each other against the world, and the day he finally scraped together enough money to rent their small house. He told her that he wanted the same thing she did, a place that truly belonged to them. From that moment on, he vowed they would stay together, no matter what. Lu's joy lit up the table brighter than any lantern in the restaurant, and the night closed softly around them. Watching her eat, Sho's expression softened into something heavy yet tender. He admitted that life with him wasn't easy, that she would probably be eating better at the orphanage, and that he knew his lack of money was affecting her. His apology was quiet but deeply sincere. Elsewhere, the Sky Network convened a meeting. They were analyzing the mysterious figure who had defeated the criminal. His voice and movements suggested youth, which made the potential of his power all the more unsettling. They needed to find him as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Sho was back to selling tofu on the street. His reputation had grown so much that his entire stock vanished within 10 minutes every day. This annoyed him slightly because he could no longer absorb the negative emotions he relied on. Everyone seemed too happy with the tofu. But when one impatient man discovered the tofu was sold out, Sho collected 50 points from his irritation. A spark of mischief lit in Sho's eyes. The next customer approached, eager to buy. Sho theatrically invited him closer, only to reveal that everything was sold out. The man's rising frustration earned Sho a clean 100 points. Sho saw opportunity everywhere now. The following day, Lu woke from her long rest with her strength fully restored. She rushed to Sho to share the news and summoned the creature whose energy she had taken. When he asked how she controlled it, she explained that it obeyed her completely and could even strike him if she wished. Sho instantly surrendered with a pleading look that made her laugh. She also noted that she could see the memories of those she absorbed, and she complimented Sho's powerful punch she had glimpsed in one of them. Sho was thrilled. This ability opened more possibilities than he expected. Then Lu mentioned something she saw in the memories, the location of a stash of stolen money. She suggested retrieving it. Shu immediately refused, saying that if they took it they would have to hand it over to the police, and questions would arise. questions that would expose her powers. And so the day shifted, its warmth cooling into silence, leaving Shou alone with the weight of what he believed was right, and the ache of the girl who wished he had believed in her just a little more. Lu didn't take that answer well. She argued that keeping the money could help them buy the house they lived in, that they could finally do something meaningful with it. Shou admitted he wanted that house too, but not by choosing a path that felt wrong. He teased her gently as he explained, but the humor did nothing to soften her frustration. Hurt and discouraged, Lu turned away from him and walked off, her steps growing distant. The next morning, Shou walked into class to find the room buzzing with excitement. Everyone was still stirred up about the incident on the bridge, their voices bouncing off the walls like restless spirits. Shou slipped into the chaos with a mischievous grin, teasing the crowd just enough to spark a few annoyed glances, and quietly collecting the points that irritation brought him. Once he settled into his seat, he leaned toward Jia to ask about the Blessed Land. Jia explained that it was a place rich with spiritual energy, the kind of place where strength grew quickly, and awakening arrived in a flash. Xiao liked the sound of it, though the price of such land felt far out of reach. Jia then mentioned another method, magic stones, and news that the school would be distributing some the next day. Xiao accepted this as perfectly timed fortune. The following morning, a new principal appeared on campus. He carried himself with the controlled weight of someone used to authority. As he passed by Shou, a subtle pressure rolled off him, a sharp, unmistakable presence. Shou instantly recognized him as part of the Sky Network. The principal, Li Xiao, sensed that someone had noticed more than they should have, yet he continued the welcoming ceremony without a flicker of concern. When the ceremony ended, Li Xiao moved straight to the Duan class, his steps cutting through the hall with silent purpose. He warned the students about a mysterious sword-wielding figure who had recently emerged in the city, describing the details with precision so they could report the individual immediately. Afterward, he distributed magic stones according to each student's level. Since Xiao's rank was low, he received only 2. Meanwhile, Li Xiao paid a visit to the old man, questioning him about the mysterious swordsman. The old man gave nothing away, brushing off the suspicion with a gentle scold, leaving Li Xiao awkward and empty-handed as he left. Shou returned home that evening, where Lu immediately asked about the Sky Network and the Earth domain. Shou explained everything he knew, then revealed a piece of news he had been holding back. Lu's excitement grew until she saw the money he had saved and the new phone he handed her. He went on to tell her that the landlord had agreed to transfer ownership of their house to him starting the next day. Later, Shou pulled Jia aside to ask about the value of the stones. Jia explained that selling them was forbidden, but he did know someone down in the black market who would buy them. One call later, the price was confirmed, 120,000 yen per stone. With just 2, Shou realized he could fully buy their home and even furnish it. The thought lit his mind like a spark. Shou continued training afterward, steadily sharpening his power, while Lu's own energy began growing alongside his. When the deed to the house finally landed in his hands, a message arrived from the school. The students would be traveling to a new training site. Shou realized he would be gone for a few days. Lu's joy overflowed before she could contain it. She threw her arms around him, tears brightening her eyes. For a moment, their small home felt like the warm center of the world. The next morning, transport vehicles waited for them outside the school. The students boarded, and as the engines rumbled, Yashida began describing their destination. The place was known as the Ruins, a chaotic world born from the alien invasion. Within its depths lived illusions, treasures, and dangers alike. But its heart, the core eye, was the true prize. Anyone who claimed it would cause the entire ruin to vanish. The students listened with sharpened focus, as Joshua added that the leader of the Sky Network had recently retrieved such a core eye, which turned out to be a sword. Excitement rippled through the group. Eventually they arrived. Their instructor gathered them and explained that this mission was classified, meant only for experience, and that any leak of information would lead to military punishment. The students answered in unison, then entered the site, received their meals and sat to eat. One chubby student, however, loudly complained about having to eat on the ground. He demanded a chair, disrupting the quiet. Although none were available, a soldier eventually took pity, or perhaps simply wanted to silence the complaining, and handed over his own chair before sitting on the ground himself. Xiao watched the scene unfold with clear annoyance. He walked over, his demeanor turning sharp. He ordered the student to get up. The boy pretended not to hear, a mistake that earned him a swift punch. The instructor rushed over and dragged the student away while Xiao calmly returned to his meal, chewing as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Later that night, the camp glowed with the soft shimmer of training auras. Everyone immersed themselves in cultivation, everyone except Xiao. He stood off to the side, arms folded, watching the others sweat and strain with a look that blended boredom and mischief. Training that way had never suited him. There were easier paths to power, and he had already found one. He slipped away with a sly grin and approached the class leader, who was deep in meditation. She poked at him with relentless precision, whispering, tapping, nudging, anything to stir irritation. The class leader tried to ignore him, breathing heavily through clenched teeth, but Dopewa's persistence finally sparked a wave of frustration, just strong enough for him to collect the points he wanted. With those points he strolled off and purchased apples, like a man rewarding himself for heroic work. He pulled out his phone to call Lu, hoping to hear her voice, but the signal was dead. A knot of worry tightened in his chest, faint but sharp enough to unsettle him. The silence from her side felt wrong. Trying to calm himself, he went to get food again. The cook recognized him and served extra portions, and even a soldier offered his own chair. Likely impressed by the boldness Shou had shown the day before, Shou refused the chair with a lazy wave and sat on the ground beside Jia as if it were the most natural throne in the world. Once he finished eating, he returned to tormenting the class leader. The poor guy, on the verge of snapping, retreated into the distance to train alone. Shou followed immediately. His grin said everything. This little chase was just foreplay before the real prize, more points. By the end of the night, the leader was drained. Shou was satisfied, and the stars had begun to dim above them. Finally, Shou wandered off to train properly. He opened his star map, let its glowing constellations whirl around him, and pushed his power upward. The surge was immediate. His body felt lighter, faster, sharper. At lunch the next day, the class leader approached him, face flushed with humiliation and determination. He challenged Shou to a rematch in arm wrestling, convinced that his newfound strength would let him reclaim his dignity. Shou accepted without hesitation. The teacher overheard and stepped in to act as referee. The two locked hands. Students gathered, whispering, praying for the class leader's win so Shou's torment would finally end. Shou simply smiled. This was exactly what he wanted. The moment the teacher's hand dropped, the match ended. Shou crushed the leader's strength in less than a heartbeat. Shock tore through the crowd as Shou casually collected the frustration points radiating off every student like steam. Even the teacher was impressed. He challenged Shou next, and although he was stronger than the class leader, he still fell quickly. The victory lit the instructor's eyes with genuine admiration. Shou's future, he said, would be unstoppable. Shou brushed it off with a teasing remark, claiming the class leader was his lucky charm. The leader overheard, mortified beyond repair, and continued feeding points to him out of sheer emotional overload. But the atmosphere shifted suddenly. A thick, unnatural fog seeped across the ground, curling around their legs. Li Xiao noticed it first, his expression sharpening. This place never birthed fog. Something was wrong. He struck the alarm and ordered evacuation. Shou sprinted with the others, but the fog caught them in seconds. The world twisted, pulling him into a place he had never seen. He fell hard onto jagged stone. Before he could make sense of the terrain, a skeletal monster lunged from the darkness. Sha reacted instantly, dodging fluidly, his movements sharp as instinct. He grabbed his axe, cleaved the creature apart, and climbed to higher ground for a vantage point. Below him, more skeletal beasts erupted like a swarm awakened by blood. He ran across the ruins, lightning quick, their claws scraping just behind him. Students suddenly burst from a crumbling passageway, shouting as monsters tore at their heels. One fell, ripped apart in an instant. Shao descended like a streak, cutting through all the creatures within seconds. The survivors froze, stunned by the ruthless precision of his strength. Another monster appeared behind him, and for a moment the students watched helplessly as it closed in. Shao gathered his power, struck cleanly, and shattered it. He told them to find shelter. This place was too dangerous. One girl begged him to stay and protect them, voice trembling. Shiake didn't answer. Instead, he handed her the axe and told her the only way to kill the monsters was to sever their heads. Then he turned and walked away, leaving them with wide eyes and a heavy silence. Only after he vanished did regret settle among them. They wondered if helping him earlier might have convinced him to stay. Night crept closer. Shio hunted skeletal warriors one by one, defeating them and taking a sword from one of their broken forms. He moved fast through the ruins, searching for a place to survive until morning. A flare suddenly shot into the sky nearby, bright enough to paint the ruins in a ghostly light. Shou sprinted toward it, fired his own flare into the ground to signal back, and finally saw someone standing in the distance. The figure held a flare gun and radiated energy points that pulsed faintly in the dark. Shou tightened his grip on his sword as the strange glow flickered across the ruins. In that instant, Shu felt a quiet click of recognition, as if a warning Gia had whispered earlier, finally aligned with reality. The stranger before him carried the faint, stale scent of another faction, an energy signature stretched thin with irritation. This was the spy. He had slipped into the ruins ahead of the students, 6 companions waiting somewhere in the sprawling darkness, their pact sealed by skyward flares meant to guide them back together. But Shu's sudden appearance had unraveled their careful plan, and the spy's leaking energy made the frustration almost visible, like steam from cracked stone. Still, the man put on a friendly mask. He drifted closer with an ease that did not match his fraying composure, claiming to be a lost classmate just wandering through the ruins. She played along, slipping into the performance with the calm of someone who had danced this kind of dance before. He noticed the man eyeing the sword at his hip, a long clean line of metal that glimmered even in dull light. The spy inched in, feigning casual interest, his movements too soft not to be calculated. When Shu lifted the sword as though offering it, the spy leaned forward, only for Shu to pull it back in a smooth, practiced motion. A trap sprung with effortless grace, siphoning a few precious energy points from the would-be thief. Flustered, the spy attempted to retreat, but Shu clung to him with the trembling act of a nervous student who didn't dare walk the ruins alone. The spy reluctantly accepted, shock flickering briefly across his features, and together they ran. Shu would let his pace falter just enough to look believable, but no matter how the spy tried to break away, Shu stayed on his heels, gliding forward with an almost lazy stride. The spy's confusion deepened with every step. Then the earth shuddered, bone-white claws pierced the ground as skeletal monsters erupted around them. The spy bolted in panic, and Shu mirrored the fear with convincing shakiness, though every move he made was measured. The spy tried again to snatch Shu's weapon, and Shu, annoyingly playful, kept just out of reach. A well-timed shove sent the spy stumbling straight into the monster's path, and Shu vanished into the distance. The spy, almost shredded, revealed his hidden knife and cut down the creatures with raw desperation. Fueled by fury, he chased after Shu, trembling with the promise of vengeance. But the hatred simmered. He would wait until Shu slept and kill him without resistance. Later, on higher ground, the two settled to rest. Shu lay still, feigning slumber. When the spy crept close to strike, Shu's eyes opened slowly, calmly, and the spy witnessed the kind of awakening that crushed hope. Shu claimed he needed no sleep at all, and something inside the spy cracked. Morning came. Shu descended, casually unpacking tofu as if he had plucked it from thin air. The spy froze, unable to comprehend its presence in a place where such food should not exist. Shu toyed with him mercilessly, and the spy's patience broke like brittle glass. Rage took command, and he launched a flurry of blows. He was strong enough to land solid hits, but Shu moved like drifting petals, slipping past every strike. Shu stood over the body, his expression quietly heavy. The ruins swallowed the sound of his voice as he reflected on the violent absurdity of this world, how yesterday's teasing had become today's killing. He didn't laugh. He simply promised himself he would keep walking, no matter how dark the path grew. In the chaos, Shu's sword fell to the earth. Seeing his chance, the spy lunged with triumph swelling in his chest. But Shu's hand found his second blade, and in one swift final motion, the fight ended. Only then did the spy understand the truth. Shu was the same figure who had defeated a notorious criminal before. The spy collapsed, life fading with the bitter taste of realization. He moved on, stepping into a forest where apples lay scattered like fallen jewels. The trees above were laden with fruit, and as he gathered them, a squad of furious squirrels erupted from the branches, pelting him with stones. Shu endured their fury long enough to gain a handful of points, then escaped with his stolen apples. He ran until he reached a river, drinking deeply. The ruins stretched endlessly, and he wondered silently if they truly had no end. Before the thought completed, a pack of wolves surged from the shadows. He tried escaping to the right, only to find the entire tribe blocking the way, so he bolted back the way he came, sprinting with rising disbelief at his own stamina. Maybe the apples were enchanted, or maybe his body had simply leveled in ways he didn't yet understand. Either way, his speed surged, and he burst free of the wolves' reach. After a long run, he arrived at the encampment, where he had previously gifted an axe. Their numbers had grown. Shu sat among them, announcing he would stay for one night before moving on. The children pleaded with him to protect them, but he refused. He asked when they last ate, and a young girl broke into tears, admitting it had been 3 days. Shu took a bite of an apple, unfazed, then pointed them toward the forest, with the apple trees carefully warning them about the squirrels guarding their orchard like furry tyrants. The children, frustrated by his indifference, offered him extra points, resigned to their grim fate. One child tried to take the apple by force, gripping the axe, but Shu slipped behind him with ease and reclaimed it. He rose, preparing to leave, sword and axe ready for the monsters ahead. And before he walked away, he quietly placed 2 apples near the children's belongings. Soft kindness delivered with the subtlety of a drifting breeze. Then he disappeared into the ruins once more. Shu wandered through the ruins with the easy gait of someone searching for trouble rather than avoiding it. The silence cracked open when the sharp clatter of bone met the air. An enemy approaching. A skeletal soldier lunged from the shadows, spear flashing. Shu stepped back, caught the spear mid-thrust, and refused to release it. More skeletons converged, their movements jerky and murderous, but Shu toppled the first one, wrenched the weapon free, and sprinted off into the maze of stone. The skeletons fanned out searching for him, empty skulls swiveling left and right. Eventually they abandoned the chase. The instant their backs turned, Shu emerged from his hiding spot with a grin barely visible, slipping after them to snatch the rest of their weapons and irritate them further. It was petty, but it soothed something inside him. Not far away, a group of teachers and students lay in ambush, hoping to eliminate the skeletal knights. They didn't know how to counter creatures built from old magic and old grudges, so they formed a shaky plan: kill the leader and let chaos take care of the rest. They scanned the group and singled out the skeleton that lacked a spear, the lone swordsman never realizing his weapon had simply been stolen. Shu's handiwork had created a false commander. The sniper fired. Bone fragments erupted in a clean burst, and the students cheered, convinced the battle had ended. But the true leader rose unshaken, and ordered a volley of arrows that sent them scattering in sheer panic. Breathless and confused, they regrouped in another corridor of the ruins, whispering among themselves, baffled by the knight's continued coordination. One instructor pieced it together: someone had stolen the real leader's weapon. Whoever had that kind of audacity had just created this mess. Before they could dwell on the mystery, they spotted a figure lurking in the distance. Shutsains launched himself onto a skeleton, shattered it, snatched its spear, and walked away as calmly as if he had picked up groceries. The instructor's face twitched with realization. The spear thief had a name. One of the students confirmed it quietly: Shu, the boy whose energy system awakened when he defeated the class leader during the rest challenge. His strength was something else entirely. The instructor made up his mind on the spot. Whatever else happened during this expedition, they needed this boy in their ranks. Meanwhile, Shu perched atop a tree, resting as if the world below had nothing to do with him. His mind drifted to the life he had left behind, to his sister Lu, whose presence still held warmth, even in a place like this. A soft ache pulled at him, a longing to return quickly, once the ruins had yielded their opportunities. When he finally descended and continued along the path, a circle of skeletal warriors sprung an ambush around him, their formation tight and merciless. But Shu channeled spiritual energy into his spear, and with fluid movements striking, sweeping, piercing, he dismantled their formation and left the ground littered with motionless bone. He harvested their weapons without hesitation before heading deeper into the ruins. Far away, Luil burned with frustration. Shu had vanished for 3 days, and she was already preparing to scold him into next week. But when she found the letter he left, her anger evaporated, replaced by warmth that pushed the worry aside. She chose to wait, trusting he would return. Back in the ruins, the teacher and his group trekked forward, only to find an entire legion of skeleton warriors wiped out. Weapons gone. Every trace screamed the same name. Shu was moving like a storm through these ruins, and the teacher's admiration only grew. He sketched out a plan to support the boy, though part of him suspected Shu needed no help at all. Then the sky broke open. In another sector, Shu activated his star map. He ate a yellow fruit, its energy weaving into his muscles, sharpening his control over the spears he carried. Meanwhile, the students and teachers lay in wait for the final group of skeletons. The teacher approached with gratitude ready in his throat. A spear plunged down like lightning and shattered a knight. More followed, an entire rainstorm of blades crashing from above, obliterating the skeletons before anyone could even rise from their hiding spots. Shu stepped into view and swept through the remaining foes with his own hands, finishing the fight with brutal grace. By the time the teachers and students rushed in to assist, the battlefield was already silent. Shu stood there unscathed, surrounded by dust and broken bone. He called out to the gathered crowd, offering spears and swords for 1,000 yen each, finest spoils of the skeleton warriors. The students swarmed him, trading expensive tools for new weapons, and Shu brimmed with barely contained delight. 2 classmates approached with meager savings, hoping for a sword. Shu handed them a hatchet instead, assuring them it was sturdy and sharp enough. They walked away satisfied, until Shu muttered under his breath about finally getting rid of that worthless axe. The boy's irritation spiked, releasing a burst of energy points. Once the bartering ended, the teacher gathered the group, and they continued deeper into the ruins, Shu's presence lingering behind them like the echo of a legend just beginning to form. The march dragged on until the students' legs trembled from exhaustion. The teacher glanced sideways, and found Shu moving with the same quiet ease he had from the moment they set out, unruffled, almost drifting. The man moved closer, walking beside him for a while. Shu's eyes scanned the group with concern, and the teacher explained that the students were unharmed. The casualties had been the military cadets, who shielded them with their lives. Shu felt a small weight settle in his chest. The teacher's calm sorrow revealed a heart far kinder than the ruins deserved. When the group finally stopped to rest, they lit a fire that cracked weakly in the cold winds. Shu noticed the teachers barely able to move, worn down by the long trek. Something stirred in him, soft, inconvenient compassion, and he offered them apples. The moment the fruit touched their tongues, color returned to their weary faces. The recovery was so sudden it bordered on comedic rejuvenation. The students, noticing this miraculous turnaround, swarmed Shu with hopeful eyes. Shu met them with a deadpan stare, unimpressed by the sudden attention. In his mind they were sheltered fledglings, hiding behind adults, contributing little and asking much. He dismissed them without mercy, sending them back empty-handed. But a wealthy student stepped forward, slipping Shu a watch worth 3,000 yen in exchange for 3 apples. Shu accepted instantly. Business was business, even in the ruins. Shu made a quiet note to chase them later. They owed him points. Before their trade could settle, a low tremor filled the air. Monsters approaching. The students formed defensive lines, bracing for spectral forms drifting in the dark. Shuai felt a heat rise from within, his sword yearning to be drawn, as if it had its own hunger for ghosts. He suppressed the urge, unwilling to reveal the weapon's nature here. But the ghosts felt its presence anyway. A ripple of instinctive terror passed through them, and they fled in haste, leaving the students bewildered. The group finally reached the center of the ruins, where a large crowd had gathered. Rumors swirled among the students. Sai had single-handedly wiped out an entire squad of knights. Her awakening had pushed her strength into a realm few could touch. Shu found his interest piqued. The girl carried an aura that stirred something competitive in him. One of his classmates approached, requesting Shu's presence. The unit leader wanted to see him. Shu felt a jolt of surprise, but followed without resistance. Sai was already there. The leader thanked them both, recognizing the sheer scale of their contributions, and asked for their aid in descending deeper into the ruins the next day. He demonstrated the depth by dropping his sword into a dark opening. The weapon devoured his energy rapidly, unlike Shu's blade, which consumed nothing at all. The abyss measured roughly 100 meters. Too dangerous for now, the exploration would begin tomorrow. And since he still possessed a mountain of weapons, he decided this was the perfect place for another impromptu market. People flocked to him again, eager to trade for spears and swords. Later, Shu sat alone, quietly tallying the negative emotions he had collected. The list revealed 9 individuals with no names, only numbers, spies, hiding among the students. He scanned the crowd, trying to identify them, but overlooked a commotion on the other side of the ruins. Teacher Li Xiao arrived, carrying an entire apple tree on his shoulder as if it were a bundle of sticks. Strength radiated off him in waves. A furious squirrel burst from the foliage, outraged by the theft of its apples. The moment it spotted Shu, its fury intensified, launching itself at him. Shu casually caught it mid-flight and bribed it with an apple. The little creature melted into docility, clinging to him like a spoiled pet. Jagaya hurried over, relieved to find Shu unharmed. He shared the tale of how he had defeated 4 knights on his own, his energy surging since entering the ruins. Shu felt genuine pride in his friend and gifted him a spear, this time free of charge. Then one of the spies approached. He demanded a spear, promising 50,000 yen after they escaped the ruins. Shu rejected him instantly. Future money meant nothing here. The man's irritation seeped out in dark waves of negative energy. Shu checked the name hovering above him, and finally saw the truth. Another spy stood right in front of him. Below, the remaining 8 spies realized one of their own had fallen behind. Duty over loyalty. They pressed on without hesitation. After that, Teacher Li Xiao gathered the students beneath the fading glow of campfire embers. His voice cut through the night like a blade too tired to pretend. Tomorrow, he declared, they would plunge straight into the ruins. No grand strategy. No elegant formation. Whoever stood in their way would simply fall. The other teachers stiffened, their faces flickering with disbelief. But Li's resolve was a stone they could not move. Night settled deep. While the children slept under ragged blankets of silence, shadows peeled away from the darkness, spies slipping into the ruins before dawn could expose them. Their mission was simple and treacherous, steal the core eye. But Shu sensed the disturbance crawling along the stone. He intercepted one of the spies, blocking his descent with the stubbornness of someone who hated being woken up for nonsense. The spy's temper snapped, and steel whispered through the air as the two clashed. The lone spy lifted his weapon, ready to silence Shu for good, but Shu unleashed a thunderous roar that cracked the night open. He accused the intruder of trying to sneak ahead and steal the core. His voice boomed through the cavern like an alarm bell. Children jolted awake, and Liao's eyes sharpened as he understood what was unfolding. A pulse of killing aura surged toward them, and the spy barely had time to flinch. Teacher Li descended like a falling hammer, knocking the intruder unconscious with a single merciless strike. Li revealed the truth he had kept hidden. He hadn't approved the earlier assault because he suspected spies lurked among them, and he had waited for their treachery to surface. He ordered the capable fighters to gather. They would eliminate the monsters and retrieve the quarry before the enemy could. Shu, Sai, and the other prepared students stepped forward, ready. Liao approached the unit commander. He asked the man to remain behind and protect the academy's non-combatants. The commander complied with a sigh, subtly reminding Liao that a little advance notice next time wouldn't kill him. Liao nodded, not actually promising anything but pretending politely. The fighters assembled. Liao delivered a speech framed like a lantern in darkness. Use your minds, not your muscles. The path below was dangerous, and only sharp thinking would lead them out alive. With quiet determination, everyone agreed. A Sky Network member wove a rope ladder from shimmering energy threads, lowering it into the abyss. One by one they descended into the cold breath of the ruins. Shu felt a strange pulse from his sword mid-descent, like a heartbeat that wasn't his, but he continued downward. At the bottom, horror awaited. The spies had performed some chilling ritual, ending their own lives, every one of them. Li examined the bodies, his expression unchanging, and declared their death rites something best left untouched. The group pressed onward, until the cavern bloomed with eerie crystals that twisted light into unsettling patterns. Then came the ghosts. They surged from the shadows like storm waves. Li's aura exploded outward, cutting down specters in sweeping arcs of power. Yet more poured in, surrounding the students in a tightening ring of cold death. The teachers quickly realized the ghosts' bodies were fragile, easy to break once struck, and joined the fray. Only Shu found himself untouched. Every ghost that drifted toward him recoiled, trembling in the presence of his sword's overwhelming aura. Disappointed at being excluded from the violence, Shu charged forward and hacked down a cluster of ghosts on his own. His blade drank their energy greedily, strengthening him with each kill. But the battlefield shifted. A ghostly hand struck down a soldier, and the truth crystallized. This spirit was one of the spies. The ritual had transformed him into a phantom, capable of slipping through defenses to steal the core eye. Fury ignited in Li. His defensive spell shattered the ghost in a blaze of force. Then Liao gathered the teachers, scrambling for a method to pinpoint the creature's movements. But the ghost was invisible, untethered, and silent. Shu's sword pulsed again, tugging his instincts to the right. He swung to everyone's shock. He struck the ghost cleanly. Li froze. How had Shu done that? Shu claimed it was luck. Li refused to believe him, and Shu cheekily pointed elsewhere, leading Li to land yet another blow. Shu blinked, baffled that it worked twice. After a few failed follow-ups, Li concluded the universe had simply granted Shu 2 free miracles, and he stepped away before the boy could spend any more of his cosmic luck. Then the world shifted. A massive gate groaned open, and an army of undead stormed out like a tidal wave of bone and hatred. At their head rode the skeletal commander, radiating ancient malice. He vowed that none who entered his fortress would leave alive. Li pointed to the commander's spear. Its core gleamed with unmistakable power. It was the Eye of Formation. He ordered the students to handle the lesser threats, while he took on the skeletal lord himself. Battle erupted. Li clashed with the enemy leader, severing his horse and wounding him. Enraged, the skeletal commander unleashed his full strength and the two warriors collided like storm and steel. Meanwhile, Sky Network fighters and students carved through the horde. A monster lunged at Shu, but Sai intercepted in a fluid strike, dispatching the remaining creatures with swift precision. Inspired, Shu rushed forward, only for the skeletons to scatter in terror at the aura burning from his sword. Mildly offended, Shu abandoned the battlefield and ventured deeper into the fortress in search of something worth his time. Inside, the walls whispered secrets. His sword trembled, warning him. A spy lay in ambush, dagger ready, but Shu's blade reacted first, silencing the assassin with instantaneous judgment. Back at the battlefield, Li wrestled for control of the commander's spear, refusing to release it even as the skeletal lord swung him violently left and right. Shu wandered into a forbidden chamber, marked by a sign that said no entry, his cue to proceed without hesitation. Inside stood rows of guards frozen in place, each gripping a spear. Shu approached them with the casual confidence of a man entering a warehouse sale. As he reached for one spear, the guards awakened, attacking in synchronized hostility. Shu drew his sword, and terror rippled through the group. They hesitated. He took advantage, collecting spears like a bandit with a grocery list. One guard clung stubbornly to his weapon, until Shu unsheathed his blade with a slow, threatening gleam. The guard's will crumbled, and Shu seized the spear without resistance. He continued on, stripping the remaining guards of their weapons, one by one. Elsewhere, chaos swallowed the battlefield. Teachers and students were being pushed back, their strength thinning like smoke in a rising storm. A skeleton's blade nearly claimed one of the teachers, but Sai, exhausted and fierce, cut through the swarm in a single sweeping blaze, saving him just before the jaws of death snapped shut. Master Li still clashed with the enemy commander in a duel that shook the ruins. The skeletal lord bound Li in a crushing hold, as if the fortress itself tried to cage him. But Li unleashed every shred of power left within him, and broke free, seizing one of the commander's spears in a surge of raw force. Sai stood amid heaps of broken enemies, her energy flickering like a candle in its final stretch. At that same moment, Shu reached a chamber pulsing with ancient tension, a place that seemed to guard the true core eye. His presence stirred something deep, something watching. The commander sensed it. He abandoned the spear in Li's grip and lunged toward Shu's location with predatory urgency. Li felt the truth hit him like cold water. The ruins still stood unbroken. That spear wasn't the real Cory. Without hesitation, he chased after the commander, bursting into the hall of guards. The skeletal commander shouted an order, and the stone-faced guards sprang to life, encircling Li. A perfect trap. Outside, energy reserves everywhere reached their final drops, and despair seeped in like winter frost. Hearts tightened, hopes dimmed, the end seemed inches away. But before doom could claim its victory, Shu opened the ancient mechanism before him, revealing the true core eye. The instant his fingers brushed its surface, the entire ruin shuddered. Reality peeled away. The commander, his forces, and everything tied to the ruins were pulled inward, swallowed by the shimmering core. Even the spears Shu had collected were ripped from existence. Outside, the mist dissolved in slow, majestic spirals, revealing the world again. Survivors staggered out one by one, overwhelmed with relief to feel solid ground under their feet. Then, out of nowhere, Shun stepped through the entrance, glowing with the quiet, unmistakable aura of someone who had conquered the impossible. Silence froze the world. She strode to the teacher, casually handed over the mountain of spears he had collected, and with impeccable shamelessness claimed points from everyone involved, leaving the rest speechless as he walked away. Then shock rippled through the crowd. The class leader, his head bandaged, sat receiving treatment, when Yashida rushed over in a panic, demanding to know where Sho was. They checked the weapons station, only for the teacher to tell them to search for him and that if he wasn't there, the only thing left to find might be his body. Even he doubted that a boy that strong would fall easily, but fear clung to every heart. Energy drifted toward him. Lose energy, prickly with annoyance. He looked up and found her perched in a tree like a furious guardian spirit. She leapt down, greeting him with her signature kick, then frantically inspected every inch of him for wounds. Finding none, her relief shattered into tears, raw and overflowing. It was a simple moment, but one painted with the soft glow of something deeply human. Shu apologized for leaving her alone for so long. She collapsed into his arms and he promised to take her to the finest restaurant in town as repayment. Her smile lit the whole scene, ending the day on a note as warm as lantern light. After emerging from the ruins, Master Li headed for the Sky Organization to report what had transpired, and that someone had stolen the core eye. The unit leader stopped him briefly, asking what message he should give the reporters crowding outside. Li instructed him to tell them he was leaving on urgent business, and suspected the spies had escaped with the core. The leader nodded, resigned to the chaos. Meanwhile, Shu and his sister walked home, only to run into the old man who immediately checked on them. He lectured Shu about training the way a river fights the current. Stop for a moment and strength fades. Shu agreed, adding that safe training still beat dying in cursed ruins. The old man chuckled and revealed that Shu's sister had been searching for him every day, even climbing the tallest tree in the city to spot him returning. Shu beamed, while his sister nearly melted from embarrassment. Back home, Shu asked her to summon her creature. She did. Puzzled, he activated his power and brought out 2 glowing stones. Her eyes widened. He explained that the sword had absorbed ghost energy and condensed it into a crystal, and the colored stone came from a strange entity best forgotten. She asked what the plan was. Shu said the creature could eat the stones to power up. It did, and its dark energy surged wildly before it broke into uncontrollable laughter, shaking with bizarre joy. The 2 siblings stared, horrified. Shu quickly produced another gift, 2 apples from the ruins. Her anger evaporated instantly into sparkly delight. While she munched happily, a squirrel glared at her hungrily. When Lu noticed him, she lit up and immediately adopted him as her pet, naming him Xia. Lu erupted, a laughter crystal, and previously a dead pig. She declared Shu completely useless as dark frustration radiated from her. The squirrel resisted, offended by this abrupt fate, but after receiving a bribe of chips he softened and accepted his new destiny. Lu told him he could have more chips only if he stayed with her forever. Xiai agreed without hesitation. It became one of the funniest scenes of the day. Unexpected, heartfelt, and perfectly absurd. Shu slipped quietly into his room, the night settling around him like a velvet curtain. From within his belongings, he drew out the formation eye, its surface pulsing with a silent ancient rhythm. He placed his hand on it, let his power flow, and in an instant his consciousness was pulled upward, as though his spirit had been lifted by a shimmering current of magic. He drifted through the air, weightless, wrapped in a soft glow. The artifact revealed itself as the seal of river and mountains, a relic that allowed him to observe vast territories without ever revealing his presence. The world unfolded beneath him like a painted scroll, alive and watchful. Shu snapped back into his body, breath steady, but curiosity rising. Something within the seal tugged at him again. A whisper, an invitation. He reconnected his consciousness and stepped into its hidden realm. Inside, he found a vast inner world, quiet and boundless, where several of the weapons he had taken from the ruins now rested like treasure, awaiting their rightful master. A grin sparked across his face. A private armory, better than any dream he'd dared to have. Then he saw it, a colossal gate standing at the far edge of that space, towering and mysterious. He approached it, pushed with all his strength, and managed to pry open only the slightest fraction. Through that narrow crack, he caught a glimpse of the very ruins he had just escaped, still intact, sealed inside the gate like an entire world waiting for him. Excitement surged through him. One day when he grew stronger, he would throw those gates wide open and train in that world as if it were his own domain. Outside, Lu's worry grew heavier by the second. She paced like a restless flame, convinced something terrible had happened to Shu. Feeling the thread of her concern tug at him, Shu returned immediately to her side. He reassured her gently, explaining that he had only been testing a new power. She didn't wait. She threw her arms around him, trembling with the fear she had been swallowing alone. For a moment, her sadness weighed on the air. Shu promised her he would never leave her again. The promise softened her expression, and he invited her to dinner. Warmth filled the space between them like sunlight breaking through clouds. When he added that he had saved enough money to take her on another trip, a bright, pure joy lit her face. Her earlier worry swept away like mist in the morning wind. Elsewhere in the city, far from their warm moment, the head of the Sky Network met privately with his assistant. The atmosphere was sharp and tense. The assistant spoke of Lai Sha's suspicion that a spy had taken the formation core and absorbed its power. But the leader dismissed the idea calmly, his insight cutting deeper than surface assumptions. He had already sent 2 agents into the city, tasked with tracking unusual surges of magical energy. Wherever those surges appeared, the true core would be found. His preparations were meticulous, almost frighteningly precise. It was clear why he held the position he did. The assistant continued, explaining that the Royal Division class had performed poorly in the ruins overall. But there was something notable in the teacher's report. 2 awakenings. 2 students whose power had surged far beyond expectation. One was a boy with low academic scores but exceptional combat instincts, Shu. The other was a girl with impressive power and unwavering composure, Sai. The leader's interest sharpened. Upon hearing of Sai's performance, he made his decision without hesitation. She would be recruited into the Sky Network for special training. And with that, Season 1 of our anime comes to an end. Stay tuned for Season 2, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. See you in the upcoming episodes. Goodbye.